Hello and welcome to People and Profit, where we look at how business shapes our world. I'm Marcus Carlson. Coming up, bad times in Brazil. A political crisis drags down the economy, putting it on course for its worst downturn since records began. The European Central Bank rolls out new stimulus for the eurozone, but there are fears it's more of a sugar rush than a healthy vitamin injection. Plus, it's been billed as the hot hacking trend of 2016. We'll tell you how ransomware poses a growing threat to businesses. First up, though, Brazil's President Dilma Rousseff is fending off calls for her resignation. And there are fears that the economy will fall victim to the political standoff. Brazil slipped into recession last year, and the outlook for this year is darkening. We'll talk about that in a moment, but we'll start with a look at the political turmoil.
The largest anti-government protests the country has seen. Behind the uproar, a deeply troubled economy and a loss of trust in the political elite.
We can't bear the corruption anymore. We support the country in hosting the Olympic Games and other large events and achieve development in the process, but the problem is that the country lacks effective governance.
The governing Workers' Party is facing a probe into widespread allegations of bribes and embezzlement involving state oil giant Petrobras, a scandal which has so far cost the company around $16 billion, including $2 billion in corrupt payments. Petrobras awarded some of the country's biggest construction companies inflated contracts, with the surplus flowing into the pockets of Brazil's business elite and congressmen. President Dilma Rousseff is under increasing pressure to step down. She's facing possible impeachment proceedings over claims her government illegally manipulated accounts to boost public spending during her 2014 re-election campaign. Rousseff says she's not going anywhere.
There is no real basis upon which to request my resignation. When and if I do step down, it will have nothing to do with political interests or because of any individual or other reasons, wherever they come from.
Latin America's largest economy is in deep recession, shrinking 3.8% in 2015, its worst performance in 25 years. A slowdown in China has hit the country's commodities exports, especially oil. Brazil's currency has also plummeted by 40% in the past 2 years. Analysts say it's only likely to get worse. American bank Morgan Stanley is predicting an even steeper decline in 2016, resulting in back-to-back contractions and Brazil's worst recession since records began.
Let's get more now on what the political wrangling means for the Brazilian economy and vice versa. We can turn to Carlos Caicedo at the research firm IHS. He's with us from London. Carlos, it's great to have you on the programme again. I want to start by gauging your opinion about the outlook for the Brazilian economy in 2016. We saw a downturn, according to official figures, of 3.8% in 2015. What is 2016 shaping into from your perspective?
Yeah, we see a significant contraction, possibly even worse than we recorded in 2015, and is a combination of factors here. The political crisis is one key factor, but in addition to that, there is a slowdown in demand from China. There's an increase in unemployment. Inflation is about the 2 digits, and also interest rates are extremely high. And this, in addition to a collapse of business confidence, all this together suggests that we should expect a further contraction in Brazil that actually will make the most serious recession in Brazil in living memory, and possibly since 1930.
I want to ask you a little bit more about the political crisis. How is it, and in particular the Petrobras scandal, affecting the economy? What's the feedback loop, so to speak?
Well, basically, Petrobras, unlike other countries, Petrobras represent more than 5% of GDP in Brazil. In addition to that, employ nearly 100,000 workers, but more importantly, more than 150 companies has contract with Petrobras, and many of these contracts have been delayed or cancelled or put on hold. So the knock-on effect of Petrobras is huge as a result of this Lava Jato corruption investigation. In addition to that, is damaging the political establishment, is causing possibly the collapse of the government, and all this is having a knock-on effect in business confidence. Therefore, you're going to have less private investment, less commitment of Petrobras, and as a result of that, this adds to the whole recession.
Now, as you've been saying, the entire political establishment almost in Brazil seems to be preoccupied with Petrobras scandal and also with the process that's ongoing against Dilma Rousseff. But in an ideal world, what would the Brazilian government and Brazilian politicians do in order to counteract the recession and to get the economy back on track again?
Well, the ideal situation would be a government of national unity in which the main political parties make a truce and come together to send the message that Brazil is still in business and that they want to tackle the macroeconomic imbalances. But unfortunately, what you have in Brazil right now is an internal civil war in the ruling coalition. What you have at the moment is a total uncertainty where this country is going. Possibly Dilma Rousseff will be out of office by May. They are now discussing the possibility of giving a cabinet post to President Lula to see whether he can save Dilma Rousseff for impeachment. If Lula goes into government, possibly the country will move more to the left, which is the opposite the country needs at the moment, and it will be more difficult to reach any agreement, any consensus.
Carlos Caicedo at IHS in London, thank you very much indeed. We're going to move on now. Is the global economy hooked on central bank stimulus? The European Central Bank surprised markets recently by rolling out a new batch of measures to boost the eurozone. It's making it cheaper for banks to lend money to business and consumers by cutting interest rates. It's also to spend 80 billion euros every month on government and corporate bonds. The ECB is walking in the footsteps of the Bank of Japan and the US Federal Reserve. Mario Draghi says he's essentially providing a healthy vitamin injection, but there are fears that central banks worldwide are just giving the global economy a sugar rush.
With today's comprehensive package of monetary policy decisions, we are providing substantial monetary stimulus to counteract heightened risks to the ECB's price stability objective.
So what are all of these substantial actions actually doing? Stephen Carroll is here now with more on that. Stephen.
Marcus, from Japan to Sweden, central banks are pushing interest rates close to, or in some cases even below, zero. It's a particularly popular policy here in Europe. Some central banks, including the Bank of England and the European Central Bank, have gone further than rate cuts, pumping billions into the economy in a process known as quantitative easing. Let's look at how this has gone down in the eurozone. The ECB's goal is to keep inflation close to 2%. But you can see from the most recent figures, in February it was actually minus 0.2%. Even despite buying 60 billion euros worth of bonds a month since last March, growth has remained fairly weak too at just 1.5%. Meanwhile, the euro has fallen fairly dramatically against the dollar. That's good news for European exporters as their products have become cheaper abroad. You can see the fall on that graph there. There have been, though, other less desirable effects of the central bank action. Commercial banks who are earning less from lower interest rates are warning that they're struggling to remain as profitable as before. In Europe, investors who have money are choosing to invest it elsewhere. Deutsche Bank says a record 135 billion euros flowed out of the eurozone in the last 3 months of 2015. Negative interest rates have hurt consumer confidence in other places too, most recently and dramatically seen in Japan. So what's a central banker to do? Well, they can cut rates further, but that could backfire if consumers stop spending. They can increase monetary stimulus or expand what they're buying, like targeting more company bonds rather than government ones. Then there's an option known as helicopter money, which is essentially using central bank money to finance tax cuts, thus giving people more money in their pockets. Marcus.
All right, lots of options then, but would any actually help?
The thing is, it's quite difficult to predict. We know in the past that central bank actions haven't produced the results that they would have hoped. We also know the future is a very uncertain place, and thus it's difficult to calculate. Central banks will be thinking, though, about how they're going to wean these economies off all these extra treats without giving them the equivalent of a hangover.
All right, we're just going to have to wait and see, I guess. Thank you very much indeed, Stephen. Next, we're going to move on to a growing security scare on the internet. Software known as ransomware is quickly becoming a popular tool for cyber criminals. Hackers essentially hijack your computer, then ask for a payment in return for unlocking it. Charles Pellegrin has more.
It's a new kind of hostage situation, ransomware. A virus that blocks access to a computer or device and that can only be lifted in exchange for a ransom. Once it's unknowingly downloaded, the following message pops up.
We have crypted all of your files using a secret algorithm. We're asking for 300 euros in ransom and guarantee total access to your files.
And the price can be much higher for institutions or companies. One hospital in California had to dish out $3.5 million. This German hospital also fell prey to cyber criminals. They had to revert to pen and paper. The consequences could have been tragic.
This is the syringe pump, and it controls the patient's intravenous drips. The application is connected to our internet servers, so it's a huge problem.
In November 2014, film studio Sony was held hostage as well. When it refused to pay the ransom, many of its confidential scripts were shared with the public. In France, some fraudsters even pretend to be police officers, asking people to pay fines to unblock their computers. For this security expert, paying up is out of the question.
Sometimes the cybercriminal will send the correct key, but that's not always the case. So there's no guarantee that you'll get your files back.
Until recently, smartphones were not targeted, but a few weeks ago, a ransomware case was reported on an Android phone for the first time. The FBI has warned that this threat is set to increase in 2016. Last year, close to 2,400 such incidents were flagged up, with victims paying over $24 million in ransom.
It's time for People and Profit to power down for now. If you want to get in touch about the show, connect with us on Facebook. You can also tweet me at MarcusF24. Until next time, thank you for watching and stay with France 24.